Hello, I'm Professor Rutledge Dennis, Professor of Sociology at George Mason University, where I've worked for 29 years. I was for 18 years at Virginia Commonwealth, where I started the African American Studies program there. Did my BA at South Carolina State University, my MA and PhD at Washington State University, and I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, USA. And I'm very happy to participate in this project because I think it's a very important project dealing with interviewing and the responses of the interviewee and the responses of the interviewer. These are important ideas in collecting information, as so much of the society today may think that information may not be that important, but what you think may be more important than the information you gather. So the interviewing process allows us to come back to the fact that we need data on how certain things are done, processed, and completed. So I'm very happy to be engaged in this idea. The first question relates to selecting a focus group in contrast to selecting an individual. The importance of the focus group is that, first of all, it is a group consisting of individuals with many ideas. What I found when getting focus groups together, involving many individuals with many ideas, is that it not only allows me to get an idea of how to proceed with the study, in terms of what information I get from them, but also allows them to share, because it's amazing the degree to which people don't always converse, even in the same profession. And what I've found is that getting them together, particularly as you get together, bring together teachers, social workers, community organizers, ministers, imams, rabbis, or what have you, it allows a larger pool of information to be shared. I think this is a great thing about the focus group, in contrast to the individual. The individual to individual requires a lot of time. And when you're doing research, your time may be at a premium. You may not have the time, but getting together a group of individuals in which you would ask them the questions and they can exchange, I've found this to be very rewarding for the studies that I've done. The first step in the interviewing process, whether it's with an individual or with a collectivity, it's doing things to make the interviewee or interviewees feel comfortable. That is, people are very often reluctant because they don't know, they may know the general area, but they don't know the specific questions you may want to ask them. Some people bring a sense of humor into an initial meeting. Some people may look to certain commonalities if you've gone to the same university, if you belong to the same community organizations, if you have children in the school system. That often, and many times, the interviewees will enunciate that rather than the interviewer, because when you have them together, they're talking, or they get to know each other. You'll introduce them. You say, well, please introduce yourselves. And you'll be surprised at things that they have in common. which helps you as an interviewer because it really breaks down certain kinds of barriers, which is the point. Breaking down barriers so that as an interviewer, they don't see you as someone who's prying unnecessarily, but they see you as someone who's trying to elicit information which they can use in their particular professions. And this is the point, as well as you. So we do things to break down the barriers of communication. And it could be in certain settings, religious barriers, it could be academic barriers versus community, because sometimes universities there's the town versus gown conflict, the conflict between universities in certain settings and the town. And there's some animosity there sometimes. So there are many things that we can do as interviewers to break down the barriers. So I think that's one of the best techniques, to see what they have in common and also to see what you have in common with them. In terms of stirring questions, in one sense, you want the interviewees to focus on the objective of the interview, because that's why they're there. If you're there to look at particular kinds of problems, what are the reading problems in young people in the community, or how do you do field research in a university or in a community, or and people have done these in churches, in synagogues and mosques, because there are questions related to religion and community. So the point is, how do you do them? And what kinds of questions do you ask, which are not questions to stir the interviewees in a certain direction. And what I found was that, because I'm an academician, and even high school teachers who have BAs many times and MAs, but this is particularly true of people who may be working in the community as community organizers, for example, where they may not see the same things that you see when you ask the question. What does it mean to be a committed community person? Well, the community organizers may see it as you're working particularly in the community, in a community setting, whereas a teacher may see his or her work as being just as community-oriented because they're dealing with people from the community, and they may see that as community work. How do you address issues of being attentive to medical needs in a community? So how does a teacher do that? And how does a community organizer do it? And what does it entail? It entails parental involvement. Well, how do you get parental involvement in the community? And how do you get and maintain parental involvement in the school system? And I've done both, and it is often very difficult to get parents very much involved in their children's activities in school, for a number of reasons, in terms of time, in terms of location sometimes, but you try to gauge, how does a community organizer view assisting young people in acquiring certain skills? Is it after school activities? Do you have tutoring sessions for young people, or as a teacher in the high school, or elementary school, how many teachers are willing to give up their time to leave school where they have taught for 7 hours and go to a community setting where they can tutor students after school? Because there's certain things you can't do in school because time prevents that, time delimits that. So we try to find out what problems can be addressed by teachers in school, and what problems can be addressed by community organizers, or in some cases, I know in cases where students are tutored in churches, in some cases in mosques, a few cases in synagogue. But the aim is the same. How do you get students to become more alert to certain educational needs? In this case, reading skills or writing skills. A question may be, as I've started this particular question, what does the community mean? When I ever ask the focus group, how active are you in your community? Well, a teacher may say, well, I'm a teacher. I give up my time during the school days, even I give up my lunch break to tutor students, and therefore I think that I am engaging in community work. Whereas the person who runs a community service may say, well, not really, because I think you have to be in the community in our center, which is located in the heart of the community, to do what we need done. So there are differing views within the focus group on what constitutes a community. So that's a question they ask me. What do you mean by community? And of course, and I then have to say that community can be wherever people from that community may be. If you can't get there, then the school's community. If you can't get there, then the synagogue, the mosque, the church constitutes a part of that community. And sometimes that becomes a big issue for those who are very much community oriented, where they believe that you have to be in the community to be of value to us. So these are the kinds of questions. And time. How much time do you give? Again, people differ in terms of time because we all have a different time frame. If you have children, then you may not have as much time as a person who doesn't have any children. Or if you live 2 hours away from the city where you teach, that's a time constraint, in contrast to living in the community where you want a certain thing to take place. So time and distance, and also the definition of what constitutes assisting a community. And many times, of course, and as the question is asked, what is a community? I think my response, or anyone's response, may serve to bring the group together so that they don't take extreme views with respect to what is a community. That the teacher understands the community organizer when he or she says you have to really be in the community to really serve the community. And some people may go as far as saying you have to live in the community in order to serve the community. But again, these are differing views that you can get in a focus group. Leading questions. or even perspective. For example, um, if you're used to dealing with focus groups in which they're all male, then you get used to seeing he and him. But then when you get a sprinkle of females in the group and you're still saying that, inevitably one of the females will say, why do you keep saying he? You don't, you're not intentionally doing it. You're doing it from habit. And some women may see it as an insult because I've been told, look, I've spent 25 years in the community. And they'll look around and say, these young male whippersnappers are in their 20s. So, and we laugh. Give me some credit. We laugh about that, yeah. It's you get into the habit of dealing with the groups that you normally deal with. But I was happy that she said, wait a minute now. But I think, and this is true in mixed groups of different religions. If you're used to dealing with a focus group of all Christians, then you tend to use, and you know that in a group, then you tend to see that as a basis for dealing with the group. When you know everyone's a Christian, and that becomes a unifying force. And then, lo and behold, you have a couple of Muslims coming in. So you can't then use the Christian focus as a basis, or have a couple of Hindu. So you've got to change your strategy given the people who are in there with you, and you may forget that and simply focus and direct your conversations along one religious dimensional lines. And that can be misleading because different religions have different takes, different approaches on different issues. What technique would I use to help interviewers remember a work process or an incident? I often tell groups, I begin in an autobiographical way. I would say, do you remember incidents in which you were challenged by a student, or challenged by someone in the community, or challenged by a coworker on a policy or practice that you had been doing for a long time, and they said, why are you doing it that way? And many times when I want people in the group to focus on something that happened years ago, that is, how did your group respond to the hurricane or to the school shutdown? I often begin by relating certain things in my own life that will allow me to recall certain events. And I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. We've had hurricanes eternally. And I grew up with storms and floods and hurricanes. And I always try to relate what happened when we were caught at school and we couldn't go home because of floods. So there are particular things that I think you'll never forget. Or what happened when you're on a field trip and there's a flat tire in the bus. Or what happened when you a field trip and you left your brand new jacket. So these are little, and I've done these things, by the way. That's why I tell the group. So I try to remember, because there are things in your life that you don't remember all the time. But if you're asked in a setting, were there particular things that happened to you uh, when you were growing up, or when you were a young teacher, when you just began to teach, and you were 22, 23 years old, and this young student who's 17, 18 began to challenge you in class. Or if you're working at a school and you have these bright ideas, and the older teachers are, oh no, we've done that, we've tried that, and it won't work. We often hear that, by the way. I heard it here when I came here at George Mason. So it's a matter of sort of, you can't override what the older and more experienced people say, but you keep trying to inject your new ideas, hoping that somehow, somewhere it can be useful. Because young people are, for good reasons, and sometimes necessarily, arrogant in their views. Because they think they have the answers. And I think it's a good thing to have those views. So there are many ways in which you can jog people's memories, and beginning autobiographically and telling incidents that may have them laugh at you. May be a good way to do that. So
thank you so much.